Hello everyone! Welcome back to my channel. How are you today? I'm very happy to see you because today we are going to be reviewing To Paradise by Hanya Yanagihara. So I posted a poll on my Instagram and on YouTube's community tab asking you guys if you wanted me to review To Paradise or Ariadne first. And you guys voted To Paradise. It was a very slim margin, but this one won. To Paradise was a very highly anticipated release for a lot of people, mainly because the author is notorious, Hanya Yanagihara, who is of course the author of A Little Life, who, you know, to this day I'm pretty sure is still traumatizing people. So I've seen a lot of mixed reviews for this. Personally, I find myself somewhere in the middle. I rated this book a 3 out of 5 stars. I think one of the main reasons readers were taken aback is because some people expected her to write a new version of A Little Life or something, which I'm sorry, but if you're one of these people, what the hell did you what did you expect? Thank God she didn't do that again. Not only because the world's mental health is already pretty much like in shambles, but because she's already done it. I don't think she could have gotten away with writing the same shit all over again. If you are disappointed, don't worry. This book is still quite rough emotionally, at least it was for me. Even though it isn't graphic, it isn't extreme trauma that hits you in the face like a truck, I found it very tough to get through. It was emotionally very tiring for me. To Paradise is split into 3 books, and they are all set at the end of a century. So book 1 takes place in 1893, book 2 takes place in 1993, and book 3 takes place in a dystopian future in 2093, which, can I just say, it sounds like a long way away, but it's not. Like, I mean, I'll be dead by then, but not for long, you know what I mean? A lot of you guys will still be alive. Obviously, I don't think I'll make it all the way to 94, but I mean, I could. I might still be alive. And she set up this scary dystopia for us, like, thank you. And I think that she did this in a very interesting and unusual way, because even in the past, she's kind of modified the outcomes of historical events. So for instance, America is not really America anymore, right? So all these books take place in New York, and New York is not America. It's part of the free states that have evolved very differently societally and economically compared to the America that we know today. Yet it doesn't seem this unfamiliar. It's just a slight shift, a slight difference. And it's very interesting because seeing as we still get a sense of familiarity, even though she has changed certain aspects of history, it really makes the reader reflect upon how realistic it is to have this dystopian future that she's given us, right? Like, is it comparable to what we might end up in? Is it completely off the mark? Is it spot on? Yeah, nobody can really know, but it really makes you think. Though if I'm being completely honest with you guys, it's not really the interesting concept that sold this book to me. What sold it to me is Yanagihara, because she is such a wonderful writer, and honestly what got me through this doorstopper of a book, because fucking hell, is her writing. Someone reviewed this book and referred to Yanagihara as an emotional genius, and I could not agree more. She absolutely is. This book was tough to read emotionally because of how deeply she affected me with her writing. My favorite component to this book is Yanagihara's writing, her character development, and commentary on the human experience and human emotions, and it was actually a very rough read a lot of the time. There were times where I was confronted with questions that I didn't really want to answer, I didn't want to think about, and I had to put this book down, and I was left feeling emotionally drained and tired, and I ended up calling my parents crying, asking if they still love me, but I don't think that you'll be having that experience. I'm just very insecure. But let's actually get into the synopsis of part 1, shall we? The first book, like I said, the setting is 1893. We follow the very wealthy Bingham family and experience the world through the eyes of David, a man who is 27, is from this affluent and wealthy family, yet has very little experience of the world, very little social experience, and struggles with some kind of murky and unclear health issues. He lives in this big house on Washington Square with his grandfather, who seems to have made a point of sheltering him from the world, but Yanagihara really built this quite well, because his grandfather doesn't immediately come across as an overbearing caretaker, even though he is, because he is so lovable, and the purity and sincerity of his love for David is really endearing, and you can't as a reader really bring yourself to dislike this grandfather character, because you know his intentions are good, you know he's a good person, you can tell how much he loves and cares for David. But at the same time, I'm like, let him socialize, damn, let him get out into the world and do his own thing. David's grandfather actually takes steps to secure David's future, because you know he's old and he knows he's not going to live forever, so he writes down shit in his will. He's like, okay, David, you get my house in Washington Square. Oh, by the way, arranged marriage if you want, but you should, kind of thing. You know, that's what's going on. But of course, it couldn't be that simple, because David will meet a very fun-loving, charming, but also completely broke music teacher who has no social capital, or any capital of any kind really, and he falls desperately in love. As this is all happening at once in David's life, where literally nothing has happened, you can imagine that he handles the situation very, very poorly. Even though the way he acts and behaves can get very frustrating, Yanagihara actually did a very, very good job analyzing his behavior. She uses his past experiences, unique personality traits to create internal conflict and accurately describe the emotional turmoil that David is going through. Which I'm going to add that it's a really fucking good thing that this is written in the third person perspective rather than the first, because I would be highly distrustful of any narrator who knew that much about themselves and their psyche. It really does feel like the narration is omniscient but chooses to feed us information at the same time as the character discovers it, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Like I said earlier, this book takes place in a very specific context. It doesn't happen in America, but in the Free States, a smaller subset of states, if you will, where the society doesn't really appear to be based on typical Puritan conservative values, but instead are formed around liberal ideas and progressive trains of thought, sexual liberty, freedom to love whoever you want, freedom of religion, all that generally good and progressive stuff. Yanagihara actually adds a lot of nuance by presenting this near-ideal societal structure, but as you read on, the reader will notice that there are still many issues like racism, low-class mobility, the founder families holding the wealth and just getting richer as the poor get poorer. This is important because these decisions and mindsets that we see in the first book will directly have an impact on the way the world has evolved, both socially and economically, in book 2, which is 1993, and we are much more familiar with that time. I love that Yanagihara did that, because insofar as social issues, it's not very far off from what we have, at least in the countries that I have experienced, and in America, Europe, etc. We have gay rights and gender equality, at least as far as legality goes. And because we have won these battles, we tend to forget that other issues that are equally as important still persist. And we do live in a world where people of color are discriminated against. We do live in a world where the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. And we are in a world, essentially, where class determines your entire fucking life, It's very interesting that she kind of idealized this world while also presenting the more negative aspects of it. I hope I'm making sense. Let me know if I'm not. I'm so sorry. Book 2 is split into 2 parts itself. So the first part is, again, set in New York, 1993, and tells the tale of a man also named David Bingham, because yes, as you may have noticed, if you read this book, all the characters in each book have the same names, and the reason I didn't mention it is I don't understand why she did that. And I could sit here and think up theories. I could come up with something, I'm sure I could. But frankly, No, I'm not about to spend 5 hours speculating on a theory for this when this video isn't even gonna get viewed that many times, okay? Maybe one day I'll put in the appropriate amount of effort, but not today. But if you do have ideas as to why she named all her characters the same, you can comment down below, be my fucking guest. But anyway, this rant was basically just me telling you that, character from Book 2 is also named David Bingham. He lives with his much older, much richer, gay boyfriend, and again, this is entirely normal, and it is in the middle of an AIDS epidemic, and a lot of the story actually takes place when they host a party for David's boyfriend's ex, who is about to go to Switzerland for assisted suicide. It was a very unexpected yet interesting topic, and it made me sad and upset and in a bad mood, so I put the book down for 2 days. As this is all going down, right, the party for the dying ex-boyfriend of his boyfriend, David also has to deal with the turmoil of receiving a letter from his estranged father, who is on the verge of death and who he has literally just lost touch with. And the second part is this letter from his father, where we learn about David's ancestry, the colonization of Hawaii, which again, fascinating yet totally unexpected topic, though I will say I did have to do a good amount of research. Well, not a good amount. I had to Google some shit while I was reading this book because I had literally zero knowledge on the topic. So to really get a full grasp of what was going on and understand the nuance, I did have to Google a few things to kind of, you know, not be dumb. But it was very interesting. I've got to say, it didn't have to be that long. The letter really did not have to be that fucking long. I was really impressed by these new and original storylines, and even though I found the second part, the dad's letter, to be a little bit long and tedious after a while, I thought that it was very powerful and insightful, and it gave me the opportunity to learn about something that I would have probably not looked into otherwise, let's be real. And finally, book 3. Book 3 was my least favorite out of all of them, which is really fucking unfortunate because it took out the biggest chunk of this book. I feel like zone 3 really like takes up like 2/3 of it. It was okay. I could get through it, you know, it wasn't a painful experience at all, but I did find it to get very boring after a while. Again, I don't think it had to be this long for yanagihara to get her point across. It is told in a dual point of view, one of which is the narrative of a woman who has never really known anything else but this dystopian world of 2093, who has grown up in Zone 8. What is Zone 8, you ask? Zone 8 is what New York used to be. And in a move that literally screams YA dystopian sci-fi, she meets a man who's about to whisk her out of pieces. She meets a man who's mysterious, basically, and she starts to fall in love with him. And he's like dangerously critical of the government, and it's like, am I going back to my 16-year-old's bookshelf? And the other point of view is told under epistolary format. That's the word for letters, right? I'm sorry, I'm like literally stupid. And it describes both the personal and professional lives of the people who work for the government, how this dystopia came to be, because they are from a generation before our YA protagonists. And while this is very interesting, the reason I found this book so long and tedious is that I literally could not bring myself to care about the letter writer. I'm not going to tell you who it is because it's a spoiler and you kind of suspect immediately who it is, but I genuinely couldn't really give a shit. I had already been emotionally mutilated by the 2 previous books. I think I was just done at this point, and I kept reading for the writing and the plot and kind of to see how it was going to go, and just because I didn't want to DNF it. But really, after a while I was like, I don't remember a time when I wasn't reading this. It really dragged, and though I found Charlie's segments to be really fun and interesting and very endearing as well, she's a character you will easily feel compassion for. As soon as like I saw that a letter was coming along and we were switching points of view, I was like, oh no. I wasn't looking forward to those segments at all. It was necessary, it was interesting, but it dragged and it was too much. Another thing I'm gonna say about book 3 is because it takes place in this dystopian future and it kind of criticizes certain aspects of the government that we have today by putting them into the future. I feel like it gives anti-maskers and COVID skeptics a lot of ammunition. Like, I don't think that Yanagihara is an anti-masker or anything like that, but you have to read it properly and critically to really see the nuance and all the shades of grey and not immediately jump to the conclusion that it's COVID skeptic propaganda. I don't know, it's like, I understand that, you know, it's nuanced, but I feel like if it's just really shallowly read and just on the surface, I mean, it would give anti-vaxxers ammunition, it would. Maybe that could have been handled a little bit differently. Yeah. So So overall, the characters throughout all of the books were generally very well made, very well fleshed out. I really don't have any complaints about them. But again, can someone please explain to me why they all have the same goddamn names? Again, I could sit here for 5 hours and come up with a theory as to why Yanagihara did this, and it stops being confusing for a reader after a while. Stop noticing it. It really doesn't interfere with your enjoyment of this book. It just confuses the hell out of me because why? You know, it's like, I'm sure there's a reason. Like, there has to be. There's no way she randomly did this. I'm gonna think of something. I'm gonna think of something and I'm gonna come back, tell you what I think it is. But in the meantime, if you are smarter than me and, you know, come up with theories as you see it rather than literally having to sit down and think about it to come up with something, please let me know in the comments, because right now I don't have the energy for that. I'm sorry, fuck that. I think that the reason why I actually ended up soldiering through this entire novel, despite being mildly annoyed by some of the characters and plot points, is just the writing. Yeah, okay, the stories were engaging, but I'm not big into romance, so book 1 was okay, but you know, not necessarily something I would reach for. Book 2 was something I would literally never think to reach for, okay? The topics that she approached were literally so unexpected and out of the blue, and I'm so glad she chose them. But again, I would never think to pick up something about the colonization of Hawaii, and I'm so glad it was brought up. And then the third book is just, you know, dystopia, and I like dystopia, but I'm not that into it. What really enhanced my experience is the complex, beautiful, and compelling prose, her commentary on society, on human emotions, on the political structures. I thought it was all so well done and so beautiful. Had it not been for her writing, I would have never finished this book. I would have DNF'd at like not even the halfway mark. Anyway, I think that's all I can say without going into spoilers. I'm going to try and make most of my reviews spoiler free, especially like for new releases where I feel like probably a lot of my viewers have not read this book yet. Let me know if you have read it, if you plan on reading it, what are your thoughts? Have you read Yanagihara's other books? I don't know, man, just like talk to me in the comments. I'm fucking lonely, just go for it. If you are interested in seeing a few other of my videos, you can watch one here. There you go, I picked one out especially for you. Maybe another one there. And you can subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys very soon with my Ariadne review. Goodbye.